They told me to do that. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming out, friends, colleagues from across the country and around the world. It's wonderful to have you here, and thanks for joining us for the International Press Freedom Awards of the Committee to Protect Journalists. Welcome to all of you here in New York and around the globe who are watching us right now on Facebook Live and Twitter Live for what we know is going to be an extraordinary night, and one at which we're going to ask you eventually to open your pocketbooks with love and appreciation. Let me begin by thanking Thomson Reuters for hosting the cocktail reception that we all just enjoyed. Thank you, Thomson Reuters. And also thank you in advance to the New York Times for the reception, which we'll enjoy a little bit later this evening. Maggie Haberman will be signing autographs, so stand by for that. This is the 29th CPJ Gala, and I'm told some of you were here for the very first one. You knew then that a free press is the underpinning of a democracy, and that cannot be taken for granted. The events of the last decade have shown us, if anything at all, it's that independent journalism is more necessary now than really it ever has been. That, I know, is why you're here tonight, to give your support, both moral and, as I mentioned, as we hope, financial, just a little bit later, to an organization that is there every single day on the front lines in the battle for press freedom. Over the next few hours, we'll get to know 6 outstanding journalists from around the world who are very different, but who have one thing in common. They have all stood up to authoritarian leaders and governments by exposing wrongdoing. In other words, they did their jobs as reporters and editors in countries that portray themselves as democracies. Each story that you'll hear tonight illustrates one of the many challenges faced by journalists really all around the world. Intimidation by the military for our honoree from Pakistan, imprisonment and exile for our colleague from Nicaragua. Our awardees from India and Brazil both exemplify the courage and resilience that reporters, particularly women, need in order to endure the torrent of vile online abuse and harassment heaped upon them. And our awardee from Tanzania shows how the judicial system can be perverted to slowly strangle independent media with prosecutions and lawsuits. If there's one theme that emerges from CPJ's work over the past few years, it's that nations are becoming far less tolerant of an independent press. Sure, journalists continue to be murdered or thrown in prison when they speak out, but governments have learned other less crude techniques to censor and stifle our work. Concentration of media ownership, whether directly by government or through corporate cronies, has narrowed the choice of independent news sources from China to Hungary. Our belief a decade ago that the online revolution would liberate us now seems a bit premature, doesn't it? Autocrats have learned how to use those same online tools to shore up their power. They flood the world of information with garbage and lies masquerading as news. There's a phrase for that. They dispatch troll armies after critical reporters who were vilified and harassed. Their personal information, such as phone numbers, addresses, and ID numbers, posted and published as an invitation for even more attacks. Investigative reporters are spied on, sending a chilling message to confidential sources that they will be outed if they talk to the press. CPJ has had to develop new skills to counter these very threats. The emergencies response team that they set up just 3 years ago with your financial help now spends much of its time providing journalists with information and support about how to protect themselves from these new digital enemies. Intimidation and vilification of the press is now a global phenomenon. We don't have to look far for evidence of that. That's one reason why CPJ has co-led an initiative to mobilize the American public to stand up for press freedom and actively protect their own right to be informed. As of today, 43 news outlets, tech companies, and nonprofit partners have joined the campaign known as Protect Press Freedom. And many of those are represented in this room right here tonight. Thank you on behalf of CPJ for carrying that important message in ads and public service announcements, in your publications and in your broadcasts over the coming weeks. We know that journalists are sometimes wary of being perceived as activists for some cause, but press freedom is not the preserve of one political group or one political party. It's a value embedded in our very foundational documents. Journalists need to join hands to defend it. And again, thank you, each and every one of you, for doing that. CPJ not only defends our values, it also directly helps journalists at risk. Syria continues to be a killing field for the press. But I do have a bit of good news tonight. Since last year, CPJ, with its partners, has been quietly helping dozens of journalists trapped in the northwest province of Idlib by the Assad regime and Russian forces, and has helped them escape to safety. Absolutely. CPJ has helped many resettle in Germany, in France, in Spain. One journalist who has not yet made it out of Syria is our colleague Austin Tice. Austin has been held captive now for more than 7 years. We all should not rest until Austin Tice is returned to his family, who've been cruelly deprived of news, let alone contact of their loved one, since his disappearance happened so long ago. I know that surveying this media landscape can be depressing. It is for me. But what can we do in the face of such corrosive forces eating away at the foundation of our liberties? Well, you've already answered that question by being here this evening in the first place. Do not underestimate the impact that you can have on the lives of at-risk reporters and news outlets. And you don't have to take my word for it. Some of them are here now to tell you themselves. 2 years ago, the Reuters journalists Wa Lone and Khe So-u were arrested in Myanmar. They were later sentenced to 7 years in prison for the crime of investigating a massacre of Rohingya men and boys by security forces. We in this room, you in this room, rallied behind Reuters, which mounted a relentless and high-profile international campaign to win their release. In May of this year, they walked to freedom. And I am delighted to announce that they are with us here tonight. Wa Lone and Khe So-u, welcome